Just kind of go over everything in the billing process. Now, I've set up a couple, I won't say pitfalls, but just problems here. And we'll go through those as we're doing the billing process itself. Now, a couple misnomers and a couple questions I get from a lot of people all the time we're going to talk about really quick first. There's only really one rule when it comes to doing billing out of our software. You have to close out the billing cycle at some point in time before you do an apply. That's really it. The timing on it is very flexible and can be done at various times. For a lot of you that I've trained, I've given out little sheets and stuff that talk about different steps or different ways for you to approach the billing cycle. And so basically we're going to go over those a little bit right now. For a lot of the customers that we have, the last thing that you're going to do before getting ready to print bills is going to be to do your apply process under process readings. So before you do that apply, you have to do this closeout. This can be done at the very beginning before you send out your meter readers to read, or it can be done right before you hit the apply. It doesn't matter which way you do it for most of our customers. In between that time, even if you haven't done your cycle closeout yet, you can do verifies, you can edit readings, you can enter readings by hand, enter readings by handheld, send out the handhelds and bring them back in, anything like that that you need to do. The final step, like I said, is the apply process for getting the charges on the account and starting the process of getting everything ready to show on the bills. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a couple things, a lot of which are seasonal, which is why it's a good time to talk about it right now. Some of you folks, I believe, are from up north, and you have this white stuff that shows up on the ground every once in a while they call snow or ice. And that seems to prevent some people from actually reading their meters. Since we only get that about once every 4 years down here, it's not really a big thing here in Tyler area, but in other parts of Texas and such it may be. You can, something I added in the program a few years ago, you can enter in all the readings that your readers can get either through entering readings here by account or by book, and most of the time it's going to be by book, or you can do it by the handheld processes of creating a file to send out to them, send out to the reading software or to the handheld software that they're using to read the meters, and then bring back in through the import process whatever they're able to read. Now, some of you folks that use the fixed-base systems, you still might run into this because if there's enough ice on the ground, I don't think the signals actually get through so much ice. Because when I originally wrote what I'm going to show you here in a few minutes, it was a few years ago when the state of Ohio was basically under about 6 or 8 inches of ice, and they couldn't talk to a lot of their meters. The radio reads and or touch read units weren't able to actually connect with them and get the readings in, which is why I wrote what I did. So, but at this point, what I'm talking about, you're going to pull in everything that you can, and you're going to try to make sure it's correct. So once you've entered them in, or once you've done your handheld import, you would go over and you would want to do a verify. Now, also, once again, there's different ways you can verify your accounts. A lot of people do it by book and just pick which book they want to process at that point in time. But if you're doing it by like handhelds, you can also do it by the file up here that you've just imported in. The one at the top of the list is the one that you last entered or input in the system through some handheld process, through mass estimations or something like that. I'm going to verify this group, and it's going to come up and show us the readings that we've got so far. You would normally, just like always, scan down here and look for any problems that you may find on the system. Now, looking at these accounts, these are both look like commercial or business or residential accounts. I'll get it right yet. I apologize for that. But they've got a tremendous amount of usage over here and a very large percentage of over the last reading. Well, looking at this one, this reading is considerably lower than the others. So you might have looked through your paperwork trying to figure out what's going on and realized this person should have had a meter change on it. It doesn't look like it was entered, or it was entered incorrectly because we're getting a huge usage. This one is just way higher than it used to be, so it's possibly there's a leak. If there is, it's a pretty good size one, or something just got misentered. So what we'd want to do when we're trying to figure this out, of course, is either print this out or write down the account numbers that we need to go look at to try to figure out what's going on. So I'm going to close down this report, and we're going to go look at the first account, which was account 2009. Okay, when we look at the reading history on this account, sure enough, that's really low and there is no meter changeout on here. So if the meter changeout wasn't entered in, or if it wasn't given to you before you got this far, you need to get the paperwork, of course, and find out what the information was. Since we've already entered in the new reading, you need to make note of what it was so that we can go back and re-enter it again after we do the changeout. Because in our software, just like in a lot of different types of software, you want to put things in the order that they actually occurred. That way, the program will be able to figure out everything as it would, from last reading to current reading and such like that. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to edit the reading. I've already written this information down, so I'm going to delete this line. And now we're going to put in a meter changeout. It's telling us here the last reading was an estimated reading, so we can't do corrections of estimates, which is true. After this has been put in, we can't do a correction of overestimated readings because we can't tell on a new meter if the reading is really less than the previous reading or not, since it is going to be from a new meter. Okay, when doing your change out, you want to set the date up here at the top that it occurred. I'm just going to set a date a couple days back. And then, of course, you've got a choice. If you did get a meter reading, you can enter it in here. If the meter was frozen or broken and not actually reading anything, you can come down here to the bottom and enter in a usage, and we will put in a reading based on that usage. And that's what I'm actually going to do right now and pretend that the meter wasn't working properly. So we're guessing they've used about 800 units of usage since their last reading, and it adjusted this meter reading up here, adding in 800 units to come up with what would be the reading if that was the case. Now, if this were a customer that's radio read or touch read, of course you're going to want to change all these values up here to the new meter. That way the handheld device will be able to interface with it and know what meter it's talking to. I'm going to start us off at 0 as far as the new reading on the new meter, and then save this change. We get our report here, which I'll enlarge so everybody can see. You've mostly probably all seen these before, showing you what was on the old meter and what's on the new meter, so that it'll do, you can make sure with your paperwork and everything, that everything was done correctly. On the account itself now, we have our change out up here. So now I'm going to go and I'm going to enter in the reading for that customer so that I don't forget to put it in later on. It was account 2009, and our reading was 600. So I'm going to save that change. Okay, now the second account. When we looked at our paperwork, we realized we misentered this reading. We just mistyped the number. So I'm going to go over here and edit it, and I'm going to change this to a 2 here at the beginning. Oops, which I still mistyped. 2 here at the beginning, so it'll calculate it properly when we're ready. Now, this you don't have to change. You can, of course, if you want to, but the program will take care of the usage over here when the apply process is done. So you don't have to edit that at any point in time. I'm going to go ahead and save the change I made, and then we can come over here again, and we can do a quick verify to make sure that everything looks like it's correct. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and do it by book this time. Because I did modify that one reading, it won't be in the original batch. Now this is going to regretfully show everybody, not just the people I entered in, because of what I did, which probably wasn't the greatest idea when setting this up. But going down and looking at our account here, this one looks a lot better. And going down and looking at the second one, it looks a lot better as well. So we've got better usages and stuff now. Looking through here, I'm not seeing any other problem accounts. So we're going to go ahead and apply the readings that we've got in place right now. Okay. So who notices a problem on the screen right now, if anybody? The first problem I'm presenting to you right now is we're trying to apply this book, and it's not actually doing anything. As you can see, our little cursor is not spinning as if the program was thinking or doing the calculations. The reason for it would be, and this is a fairly common question that I get called on all the time, why are all these accounts in yellow? Well, there's really only two reasons, and it's my standard little joke or line that I give everybody. Either you forgot to do this, and you forgot to close out your billing cycle, or somebody was nice and did your job for you and applied these accounts. The latter usually never happens, and so probably we forgot to close out our billing cycle. We're going to go pull up one of the accounts that we dealt with a minute ago, and sure enough, it's still applied. So we need to go in and close out that book. Okay, now we should be able to apply our book. Everybody's showing up in white now, so they're ready to process, and we're going to get in and say, okay, and let this finish off. I went through, just to kind of catch up, because I didn't realize it and unshared the program. I went back in and went to apply the accounts by book. Since I was applying it, I can see the last account that the system applied because they would all be showing up in yellow as already been applied. So I would look for the first account that wasn't applied to see if that's what the problem was or that's where the problem existed. I wrote down the next account in line, but it doesn't look like that was the actual problem account. It looks like it's okay. So it's probably one of the accounts that wasn't read yet, has another just entered reading on it, an old one that was causing my error message because it was way outside the reading date that we were putting in. So everybody that's in our first batches look to be applied right now, as we'll be able to see if I went back in here to apply it. Oops. We see all these have been applied already. Okay. These here have not, but this account doesn't show to have any problem, so it's a little confusing why we got that error. So I'm going to go ahead and try to apply it by the batches instead of for the whole book and see if that lets us get through here. Now, just to answer another question that I get from a lot of people, we cannot apply over these readings, over these accounts again that have already been applied. So if you were doing your calculations and you read most or all of your book, but there was a few people that were skipped, you had to go back in and put the readings in afterwards, you can apply the whole book to try to catch them, and it will not reapply or apply over what's already been applied on these accounts that are in yellow. They're just going to be skipped, and it's going to go down and apply whatever readings it can find in the file, like what I did here, or in the book itself. Now, it looks like everybody in that batch has been applied because it's not doing anything. So let me do the other one I had up here. That one's been applied as well. So yes, all the ones we did have been applied. The others that are showing up on the screens are people that have old readings. And so we're not going to worry about those right this second. Okay. But now, my pitfall that I was basically showing you or talking to you about is because of bad weather, we weren't able to read everybody in the book. We have a large number of people that are out here that are unread so far. By doing an unread meter list, we can show them all here. All these accounts, we need to do something with to get readings on them so we can apply the book. What you can do is, instead of having to manually go in and do a reading or something, you can go into the other reading screen and you can pick your book and set the date. And down here at the bottom, you can choose unread only. Since everybody else has been applied, we can tell in the system programmatically who does not have a new reading and who needs to have a new reading put on their account. Now with this, you can either do it as an estimation, you can use the same reading as last time. Either way, those will get you a reading to put on the account that you can figure a charge by. Now the use last is just going to give you a base reading for everybody that's still unread. Same reading as I had last time, so no usage. The estimation would go through and give us a reading on everybody that it can based on the last 3 or 4 months of history, whatever you might have your set for in the system. So I'm going to go ahead and do an estimation. It came in and put a reading on all those accounts. So now I can come back over here and I can verify my estimated readings here because all these accounts have not been applied yet that we just did the estimation for. Once this comes up to the screen, we'll kind of go through it. We'll look for any problems based on perhaps bad estimations before or just misreads. If everything looks okay, that's a rental, so that's a business. It could be that way. That one is probably wrong. If not, they probably have a lake in their backyard right now with that much water. We're going to go take a look at that account. I've probably told people the funny story when I had a leak a few years ago. I mean, I used almost 100,000 gallons of water in a month, and you couldn't tell by looking at my yard. My yard was as hard as a brick. They couldn't even do the little, stick the poles in the yard trying to find the leak. It was hard as bending the post. I live on a hill, and apparently there's a reservoir underneath my house and underneath the road, and the water was just leaking out and going down to a creek about 300 yards down my road. So nobody even knew where the water was coming from. It gets fun to try to find those things sometimes. I'm sure I really don't envy a lot of meter readers. This is what it looks like it's trying to pull in, but it shouldn't have. Oh, I see. This one's actually slightly lower than the previous one because of something. Okay, so we're going to change this. To give us regular usage. Now, most of the people that are on the phone right now have talked to me for several years, and they're used to my bad stories. I have a bad habit of telling stories about other customers and other trainings I've done. I was actually in an office telling them about a person that I trained one time that she basically was just kind of staring at the screen like she didn't pick it up, and at the end she looked up at me and said she's got it, and I never heard from her again until she retired about 3 years later, and I talked to her replacement. She really did pick it up and never had a problem in like 3 years. You just never know with some people exactly what's going to happen when you go in to train them. And some of the problems that people call in with are sometimes rather funny, and we all get a good laugh out of them once we see what the problem is. But yeah, there's a lot of folks I don't really envy. Meter readers are one of them that manually have to go out and read meters, because it can be a chore trying to get to some of those meters when you're reading them. I was talking to somebody about it yesterday. I went to a customer site one time and was walking around with the meter readers as they were showing us some of the things they had to do. And one of the meters they had to read was literally a two-person job. One person had to hold the ankles. The other person, as he went 8 feet down in a manhole, to use the touch read wand on a meter. Another one they had to read, the meter was put in before a brick stairwell was put in, and you literally had to read it with a mirror because you could not get behind the stairwell to get to the meter. And yeah, I've heard a lot of other stories. For those of you that use handhelds, on the old touch read handheld devices, there's a little brass cap on the end, and that's where you actually plug in the handheld wand. But most meter readers from back in those days would tell you that's their protection device. That's the dog beater. Because if the dog started coming after them, the handheld suddenly became a self-defense mechanism. And they would literally have to fend off dogs to, before they could get out of the yard, because the dog was left out by mistake or maybe on purpose. Okay, so we've got everybody read in the book now. So we've gone through actually a couple other problems I didn't expect. But just to recap on the things that we discovered, when doing our meter readings this time, we had one where a meter changeout wasn't put in, and we had to go in and put the changeout in and re-enter the reading so that we could calculate that account. We had one account that when the meter readings were typed in, they were mistyped, and it was given several 100,000 units of usages that the person wouldn't have used. So we went back and corrected that on the account. We also went in and did an estimation on everybody that the meter readers couldn't read because of bad weather, and we're able to apply those. And then lastly, we had a misread when the estimations were done, and we had to go in and correct that to get everybody applied. But now we've got everybody in the book applied, and we're ready to move on to the next steps. Now, what some of those steps may be, if any of you customers are using our combined billing process, you would use this option to transfer the information from what we call the sub-accounts, the accounts that you normally read every month, to the master account, which is the account that you're actually printing on the bill and you'll be making the payment to later on. Now, just to recap, if you're not familiar with that, you can set up an account and you can attach other accounts to it. The account that you're billing is like, well, for example, a school district. The school district may have like different football fields or campuses, but they only want to get one bill. So you have an account in your system for every one of those different meters that you're reading, but they only want it all on one bill. So we created a process years ago called combined billing, where on a regular piece of paper, we can print out a bill that shows not only what the total amount is that the customer, the master account as we call it, is going to be paying, but it will also give a listing of each one of the subsidiary accounts that are attached to that master so they can see where the charges came from. That's combined billing. Another one you may end up doing is payment plans. If you've got payment plans set up on some of your accounts, you can process those at this point, and it will put one periodic amount back on the customer's account, so they'll have to pay that plus their regular water bill on each bill until their deferred amount or payment plan amounts are paid off. Other things you may want to do are bank drafting. If you do electronic bank drafting or paper bank drafting, where you create a list of any customer that wants to have the money automatically taken out of their bank account and put into your company account to pay the bill, you would come in and process drafts and create either, more than likely, an electronic file called a NACHA file, or PPD or ACH file, or you can create paper files for those banks that still are not doing electronic bank drafting, which most of them are doing that today, but I actually still have a couple customers that do paper drafts. At that point, it lets us know who's going to be drafted that month, so on the bill, when we come over here to print it, it will print a message on there saying drafted, do not pay. That way they know that the money is going to be automatically taken out of their account, and they won't have to worry about coming in and paying it. The billing process itself is going through and choosing by which method to generate them, which books we want to do billing for, and then over here lastly, there's different types of billing you can do. Paper only is what most people do, where they're printing it on a regular paper bill. But if you're one of our customers that's using Transaction Warehouse to do some of the payments that they do electronically, where they send out a notification to the customer on their cell phone or something like that, you also, after doing your paper bills, will come back in and do what was called for email customers only. So it creates a record for them that Transaction Warehouse can use to notify them that their bill is ready and how much it is. I've also added in the latest version the ability to choose which bill form you need to print on for our customers that use multiple types of bills. And it could be something as simple as most everybody is printed on the regular postcard or full-page bill that you use, and then you go back and you print your master bills, which I was just talking about, the combined billing. So you'd switch between those and just print those out as well. Once that part is all done, though, and your bills are generated, that's really the end of what a lot of people consider the billing process. You've gotten the bills printed out. You're now engaged in the fun part of separating out all your bills if you're using postcards and separating them into bins, quite possibly, and taking them to the post office. Or for the lucky ones that do it in bulk mail, you're just going to dump them all in a bag and give it to them to sort out and not worry about doing it yourself. At that point in time, you've got a couple days, usually until the mail comes back in, especially nowadays since it's not done for a lot of places in their local city. It's sent off to a regional postal service to be sorted out, have barcodes printed on or whatever the case may be, and then sent back to be delivered to your customers. So after that, you're going to, of course, be taking in tons and tons of payments until everything hopefully is paid off. But for when it's not, then you get to come in and apply late fees, do meter shutoff lists, possibly print second or reminder notices or disconnect notices for your customers, and then continue on through the whole process. Once again, ending up with where we started at by either sending out your meters to be, or your readings to be read, or to do your cycle closeout and then start up from there. That, in a nutshell, with a few bumps along the way, is the billing process. So does anybody have any questions? Let me see if I can get where I can see those.
Yeah, we actually have a number of questions that have come in throughout the webinar, and you've done a great job. Our first question is, so just to recap, you cannot apply unless you've closed out your cycle.
That is correct.
That is correct. And also with these questions, I will type them up and have them as a additional document to go along with any additional stuff we add to the webinar. Second question is, how does the system come up with an estimate usage?
An estimated usage, well, in our system, there's a field back in setup under meters and deposits where it's the number of periods estimations are based on. This can be anywhere from 1 to 12 months. You won't want to do it for more than a year, and I actually have some customers who do it for a month, so they charge the same usage as last period instead of just doing a zero usage. That kind of threw me at first when the first person asked me about that, but it made sense after we talked, and I've had some other people do that since then. So once you come in here and set a period, which 3 and 4 are probably the most common that are set for most of our customers, the system will go through for whatever method you tell it to, whether it's the other readings here picking a book and telling it to estimate everybody in that book, or whether you're going down and entering your readings, whoops, yeah, I can do it that way too, and putting in an account number. You can just hit an E over here and it will go through and know it's doing an estimation. Well, what it does is it looks at the last 3 readings, it comes up with an average, and it divides that by 3 to come up with what the estimated usage would be. So it's a little bit more mathematically figured guess at what this customer may have used. I mean, I sometimes call it, when people put their own usage or reading in there, a guesstimation, because you're guessing just like the program would based on the customer's usage history what you think they may have used. We're doing it a little bit more mathematically, like I said, by actually come up with an average of their last 3 periods in my case, and putting that in as the usage. That's added to the previous reading that was on the system, and then we come up with a new reading based on that amount.
Our next question is, with applying using the estimate or last reading options, is there also an option to manually enter readings, then go through the applying process?
Yes, the enter reading process allows you to either enter readings for an entire book, like for example here, going down and typing in the readings as you need to, editing them if you have to in case you mistyped one. You can also, like I showed you a moment ago, using an E command or an L command or Z, either estimate, use the last reading, or plug a 0 in place of a reading you're typing in. So this is where you could enter it in by book. You can also do it for individual customers the same way by putting in their account number and then putting in a reading. And you can keep doing this for as many of them as you need to do. So in my earlier example, when I was talking about the initial billing period, if your readers were able to read everybody in the first batch, but a few people were missed, if they go back out to read those, chances are they're not going to be side by side. So you'd have to come in here to enter readings by account perhaps and type in each one of the accounts and put in the readings that were missed the first time. At this point, you can apply, if you're applying or verifying by book, you can do these you've entered in separately along with the rest of your accounts, or when you put those readings in, they're going to show up like this where it's by account that you entered them in your system. And you can go into the reading entry portion. You can do it by account and verify or apply just this group of readings you entered in separately. So I hope that answers that question.
I hope so too. So kind of going back to the estimates, we did have a question about can you remove the high and low number in the program estimate?
Not quite sure I understand that question.
I think they're trying to find like a median number, so they're not quite getting just the
I
last
see what
3
you mean.
readings,
No,
but taking
yeah,
the highest and lowest.
No, we don't have an option to do that in our system. I don't know if I've ever had anybody ask me that one before. It actually sounds vaguely familiar. No, ours is based off usage. We don't get rid of the high and the low and just pick the remainder, or the highest and the lowest and average the rest of them. We don't do anything like that, I'm afraid. It's something that possibly could be done if that's what needs to be done in your area, but as a standard option, we don't have anything like that, no.
Okay. Now, regarding the closeouts, when should penalties be applied?
Penalties are applied on the morning after your due date, is the best I can say. Normally at that point, on the morning after your due date, there's a couple things you're always going to want to do. One, put in any payments that were put in your box overnight, so that anybody that tried to get in on time, if you want, you cannot apply penalties to them because they did try. You are, two, going to want to go in if you do bank drafting, and you're going to want to apply your draft payments because you never want to penalize a draft customer because they're being automatically paid. Once all those are done, at that point in time, you would go in and you would print out an overdue list or just go in and apply late fees, either for the whole book, which would be preferable, or going in and do it one account at a time, which I would never expect you to do.
When in the process do you enter the miscellaneous fees, such as the transfer fee? And I feel like it kind of goes along with what you were just speaking about.
Okay, it can be a couple different ways. If you want it to show up as a new charge on your bill, you have to do it after you close out the billing cycle. Otherwise, it's going to get aged and would just show up as part of the previous balance. So at any point in time, after you close out the billing cycle, you can do it. Now normally, and I didn't say this part, but normally when I give out a list of things to do for a customer, after you apply your readings, I usually go in at that point and say, this is when you want to do any miscellaneous adjustments. And that's before you do your drafting, your payment plans perhaps, or especially apply your combined billing. You're going in and making any corrections or adding any charges on that we can't normally figure through calculations. And it may be something like a leak adjustment, something that's not really counted on, or it could be adding on fees that people have accumulated and need to be shown on their bill, like transfer fees or whatever it may be. You can go in and adjust them at that time, either into the other field, or after you've applied your readings, you can go in and adjust it into any income center you want to or need to.
I feel like we're going to be kind of having our questions overlapping because you're elaborating so well. But our next question is, when do you do drafts first, before doing the apply combined billing, or after you apply? And how many times can you process drafts, as in needing to adjust the bill after billing?
You can process drafts up until the time you send it off to the bank. You can always go back and do it over and over again, because people are going to get calls for misreads, people are going to get calls where people don't want to be drafted anymore, or lots of things like that. So we don't really limit you on how many times you can process your drafts, because corrections might be being made up until the last moment. As far as the question about the master accounts, if the master account is one of your draft customers, you'll want to do your bank drafts. Well, bank drafts are usually done right before bills are printed. So before that's done, you've already applied your combined billing. So anytime after you've done that and you're ready to, and before you're ready to print your paper bills, is when you would go in and do your processing your bank drafts for the first time at least, so that we know who to print that message on.
Okay, and the next question is, where do you print out the report for the payment plans?
There are, whenever you process your payment plans, it generates your report at that point in time, or should, showing you what accounts it has put money back on the account for. You can also go in at any point in time on the report screen. There's going to be a payment plan balance report here that you can print out. We'll show you anybody that has a payment plan amount that still owes you money, how much money they owe you, how many periodic payments they have left over, and such like that.
We only have 3 more questions, so we're wrapping this up. How do the dates that the closeouts are run on, affect the reports?
They really don't, to a point. I mean, most of the time on bills, the dates that you see there are based on your reading dates. They're not based on closeouts and things like that. They're based on the dates that you put in the system when you're entering in your readings by hand or doing your handheld device. We're going to pull a reading off of that if we're given one with that, or when you go in and do your estimations, you can also set a date over here as well. These are the dates that you're going to see there as the starting date and ending date of the period. The closeout dates, as far as cycle closeout especially, doesn't have anything to do with the billing dates on the bill at all, unless there's some customization I'm forgetting about. Now the period closeout dates, the financial period closeout dates have absolutely nothing to do with the billing dates on a bill. The only thing the closeout would do in reference to the bill, besides letting you apply, the closed billing cycle in our system ages the balances from one billing period to the other, or one age period to the other. So if you put in an adjustment on an account before you close out the cycle, it's not going to show up as a new charge on the bill. It's going to show up as a previous balance. Now, that's how a lot of customers determine when they want to put a penalty on their account. Most people don't want the penalty, the word penalty and or the amount to show up on their bill, because too many customers call and complain about it. So for years, ever since I've worked here actually, most of our customers do their penalties before they close the billing cycle, so that it never shows up as a new charge on the bill. It's always part of the previous balances and kind of hidden, so that they don't get extra phone calls on why did I get penalized.
Wrapping it up, what is a payment plan? Just to kind of explain to maybe some of our customers who haven't used it yet.
Some of our customers that haven't used it or may haven't got it, I think most everybody has a build right now that has it, but what it allows you to do is, everybody's got those customers that have leaks every year, especially this time of year. You're seeing them a lot more because of frozen pipes and stuff, and they can't always pay their bill. Like in my case, when I used about 100,000 gallons or plus of water, I had a bill that was several $100s in an amount. In fact, it was close to $2,000 when it was all said and done.
Oh
so what it is, most people can't pay those all at one time. You can come into a customer account, and there's going to be a button either under the Processes tab. If you're on version like the 6 series, 6.1, 6.102, 3, or 4, there's going to be a tab here called Processes, and under there's going to be one called Payment Plan in the middle of the second column. For people on the 6.2 or 6.3 series, it's going to be over here on the side. What it allows you to do is you put in an amount that you want to defer off the customer's account. So let's just say $1,000. You can also set in a number of periods that you want to allow them to pay this amount off. Now, for some of our customers, in fact, one I talked to this morning, they do all of theirs for 3 months no matter what the fee is, it sounded like. I know a lot of our customers have done it that way in the past, even when they were doing it manually before I put this in the system. But other customers vary it depending on the amount. Because if the amount's $1,000, it's still $300 extra a month, and the customer may not be able to afford that, which is why you're doing this payment plan as it is. So I'm going to say we're giving this person 6 months, which is going to charge them $167 a month plus their regular bill until this is paid off. Now, I did round this up because I didn't want it to show something like 166.666667, change out there and just look kind of goofy. So I rounded it to the nearest dollar. That may be up or down depending on the amount I rounded. So the last payment that comes in, the system should take whatever balance is remaining on the last period of payments and put that in as the payment amount that's going to be accepted. So we'll catch up. It's sort of like a car loan. The last payment may vary because of interest and stuff like that. What this is just based on because of the rounding, though. What this does is it puts an adjustment on the account for a negative $1,000, and it puts it here in Other. A lot of our customers do redistributions of credit as a standard process in the month, so it would take that $1,000 credit that's here and it would pay off the older charges here on the account or pay whatever balances are out here down until it ran out of the $1,000. So that would take that money off their account and it puts it into a table which I call a payment plan table. It's just a deferment table where that money is held, where the amount that we've written off is held and the number of periods that we're using to pay it all back off on. Every month, you're going to want to come in here and process your payment plans. Now, I stuck it here on the reading screen because I couldn't think of a better place to put it. But you want to do it after you've calculated so that they're able to see that charge that they need to pay on their account and see that it's been put back on there for them to pay, as well as whatever current charges they've accumulated because of regular usage. When the payment comes back in, you're just paying it off their account because this is putting the money back on their account for them to be billed for and to pay off.
Okay, I was just going to ask really fast, are there any penalties applied to the balance when you're doing a payment plan?
No, that's why we did it this way. It takes the money off the account completely and puts it into a deferment table so that the customer will not get a penalty. That's sort of the incentive for them to pay it all off. Because if they don't pay it off, you can go into their account, and there is a button over here called Remove Payment Plan. It takes whatever money they still owe you and puts it back on their account. So if they didn't keep up with their part of the bargain and keep up their payments, they've forfeited their right to the payment plan, and you put it all back on the account.
So, and then I had just two kind of general questions. Can you just comment on why your screen looks a little different than maybe someone else's screen, or having some extra buttons that others may not have?
This is version 6.3, which I put out or started putting out last year. It was regretfully delayed for a couple of reasons. One was health reasons for me, and the other was because of a handheld interface that was being put in here that the testing on drug out for much, much longer than it should have. So 6.2 never actually got put out. It just all got bundled up into this last year's update for 6.3. 6.3 does add a few new things in the system. I did break out the Processes tab over here and put all the buttons where you can get to them a little bit easier from any tab you may happen to be on. Plus, in version 6.2 and 6.3, I added a secondary address in here, and I broke out the service address from where my predecessor hid it all and made it a little difficult to enter in. I also pulled up the phone numbers from Extra Info and the email address and stuck them up here under one big contact information tab. Now what this screen here allows you to do is you can choose which address on the customer account you want to send the bill out to. So if you are from up north and you have snowbirds, as you'll know what that term means, you may be sending their bill to some place like in Florida, Texas, or wherever like that for part of the year, and for the rest of the year, you're sending it to wherever their address is in your district. Also, what I added into this particular version was I went in and enhanced our owner duplicate process. On the extra info screen, on the owner account info screen, I added 3 different options here. You can now select whether to send the bill out to the tenant only, whomever this person is here, the owner only, which would be the account number up here whose information would be showing here if there was one, or to both of them at once. Now, both of them at once used to be the only way we did it, and it was an all or nothing process. If you were sending it out to one owner, you sent it out to all the owners unless you manually went through and pulled the bills out. Over the last year or so, though, I had a lot of people, a lot of owners, asking to get bills just for one person, one of their tenants, and that's because they were new and they wanted to make sure they were paying their bill properly. So our old process wouldn't allow us to do this, but the new one does. Now, I've gone in and troubleshooted this a bit more by not allowing you to choose any of these other options while there's no owner account set up on the system. Regretfully, I didn't think anybody would try to do that, but regretfully, I did have some people that did, and our billing process doesn't like printing out to a null account number, or a non-existent account, you may say. And so it did cause some problems. We can update you to these, to this version at any point in time, and that way you could request it. Now, the updates, normally I used to be able to call and just update you on the spot. Like if you called in today and said I want an update, I probably wouldn't be able to get to it till Monday or Tuesday of next week because I'd need time to get your bills changed over. And some of you actually have multiple bills, and so it just takes me a bit longer to get done. This is the main changes that were done in here, dealt with billing. Took me a bit to get through there, but other changes dealt with the some handhelds that we added in the system, most predominantly the Badger Beacon system that some of your Badger salespeople have probably been hitting you up to change over to from the older Badger system. Greg there knows full well my pain with that. I'm afraid he ran into a bit more than a lot of the other customers did, I'm afraid, and I still apologize for that. Something I never thought about that would occurred with him. But some of the other ones of you may be some of our Badger customers, and you may be familiar with what I'm talking about there as well. I did make some other changes with the payment import process in dealing with iWebMS. You now can come in here and select all or deselect all of the payments that may be out there. You can print lists of the payments you have selected out here to be used to check off your list to make sure they've been processed by your payment processor on the report you download or get every day. And then you can go in and apply them and, of course, make the payments as you want to.
All right, guys, you guys rock, and have a great Thursday.